Welcome back. It's still Business Morning here on Channels Television. The African Development Bank, that's the AFDB, they've reported that Africa loses approximately $1.6 billion every day due to illicit financial flows. And this includes profit shifting by multinational corporations. This amounts to roughly $587 billion annually, significantly impacting the continent's development and resources. Meanwhile, here in Nigeria, the Minister of Foreign Affairs has placed the loss at $88.6 billion annually. That's on illicit financial flows from the African continent. He describes it as a drain on the continent's much needed resources. So following this, the Federal Inland Revenue Service is planning a 2-day national conference on illicit financial flows in its efforts to safeguard Nigeria's financial integrity through tackling the menace which adversely impacts revenue collection. So let's talk about what we could expect from this and perhaps how they intend to handle this. It's Africa we're talking about, even though Nigeria is at the heart of it. And we're being joined now by the Coordinating Director, Proceed of Crimes and Illicit Financial Flows Directorate with the FIRS. He's also the immediate past chairman of ICPC, Professor Bolaji Owasanoye joins us virtually from Abuja. Prof, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So we have heard the numbers, we've seen the numbers and how scary it is and what is depriving the continent of. But let's settle on Nigeria, especially because you just came out as the ICPC chairman. So how bad is the situation? Where are the leakages of this financial outflow, mostly from Nigeria?
Well, there are 3 major sources. The figures, for example, for starters, the figures could be higher than those that have been put out there. One of the things that we hope to be able to achieve going forward is to be able to get closer to the actual figures of losses. But the estimations are not outlandish. It is based on the volume of trade and the figures that are being declared by multinationals and compared to the tax that they pay. How does it happen? There are 3 major sources through which countries lose revenue or capital. It's through commercial transactions, through criminal activities, or through corruption. So criminal activity, you could have things like drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering directly and all that. Corruption, you could have through bribing officials of government to look the other way, to undercharge, undercollect revenue and stuff like that. But the major issue, the major source of loss is from commercial transactions, especially through aggressive tax avoidance practices by multinationals and profit shifting. Through trade misrecording or mispricing, misrepresentation of transaction records and all that. And a significant portion of this comes through transfer pricing. When multinationals trade within their group or within their own conglomerate, and international law and law of contract pretends that this is trade at arm's length. In other words, each of the companies within the group will protect its own interests. It ignores the reality that these companies are owned by the same shareholders. They are given directives by the same shareholders. You know, for example, that there are multinationals in Nigeria whose leadership, chief executive, chief finance officer, are decided from their headquarters, wherever that may be, on the surface of the earth. So the decision-making of the company here, even though the company pretends to be a Nigerian company, incorporated in Nigeria, has a Nigerian RC number, it is told what to do by its parent company, wheresoever that may be located. So this fiction, this assumption, inimical assumption of trading at arm's length, is one of the ways through which Nigeria and other developing countries, especially those who are active in the extractive industry, where they lose revenue, massive revenue. So what the FIRS is doing, because at the end of the day, what is happening is that operating expenses are increased so that profits are reduced. And even when profits counted for, the profits may be shifted to jurisdictions where the economic activities did not take place.
Sorry, Prof. Before you go on to what FIRS is planning to do, I mean, when you're painting this picture, I'm just thinking in my head, is it possible that these multinationals would do this, carry out this, illegal acts without collaboration from, the home front, from Nigerians and those in the system? Is that a possibility?
So there may be evidence, instances of some collaboration. This is basically bookkeeping. So you have a company that is doing business not just in Nigeria, it's doing business in other countries. It has subsidiaries doing exactly what it's doing in Nigeria, in other places, or related things. So those companies trade amongst themselves. They could be buying one component or the other to manufacture, say, bottled water in Nigeria. So the bottled pot is coming from another jurisdiction. So if, for example, the company wants to buy those bottled tops from a third country and the price is not reflective of the market price, the price is inflated. Nigeria is where the big market is. So it means that that transaction has been used to take capital out. It increases operating expenses and reduces taxable profit. So one of the things, so you could do that in-house within the company. You don't need any external influence. Okay? So the records will show that you have bought these bottle tops from third country at this price, whereas the market price, the overt market price, is far less than that. Now that transaction has been used, I'm just using it as an example. There are many other ways by which this is done. There are, of course, situations in which there may be compromise within the country, whereby if the auditors look at it, they know that something is odd, they look the other way. And I'm talking about not just the company's auditors who will be the Nigerians, but the staff of the company. It may be their external auditors, who may be in any accounting firm. It may even be the tax assessor who goes there, also sees something anomalous, but then refuses to action it. So part of the challenge for developing countries where the losses are so massive is a combination of factors, which includes capacity to understand and to recognize falsified records, trade records when they see it. But more importantly, to have access to information about the company on operations in other parts of the world. So you need to be able to compare the information declared by the company in a third country where it is also operating and in Nigeria. So that is what is called automatic exchange of information, and comparing the data that you get from third countries with the data that is supplied by the same company in Nigeria, and you have to do an analysis. And in doing that analysis, you'll be able to find where the anomalies lie. So it's a combination of factors. Basically, it's not just one issue of some Nigerian official or regulator seeing something wrong and looking the other way. Sometimes we don't even know what to look for.
So, Prof, this issue of illicit, and we're going to get to what FIRS is doing. This issue of illicit financial flows, when you talk to a lot of Nigerians, once you mention that, they think of the politicians. Are they absolved of this?
So this is very far from politicians. Look, from the Thabo Mbeki report, about 10 years ago, the AU, African Union, recognizing that this was a problem for Africa, set up the Thabo Mbeki panel, high-level panel on illicit financial flows. It was chaired by the former president of South Africa, President Thabo Mbeki. Okay? It came out with a report that showed that over 60% of losses in this area is to commercial transactions. And especially for multinational corporations and their operations, especially in the extractive industry, especially not only in the extractive, but most significantly in the extractive industry. As you know, the extractive industry attracts a lot of problems and challenges. Now, the remaining 35 or thereabout percent is divided between the criminal element and the corrupt. So significantly, the losses are from trade transactions, which look innocent on the surface. And mind you, many developing countries want foreign investment. It's good, including Nigeria, we want foreign, but nobody wants toxic foreign investment. So when companies bring in X amount and take out X plus Y out of the economy. So it is fictional to say that these losses are being caused by politicians. I'm not suggesting that corruption by political actors and politically exposed persons is not a problem, but it is less than the amount we're losing to commercial transactions.
And it's mostly from the multinationals.
Definitely from the big businesses, not from the small and medium enterprises. Now, this is not to say that local companies are not guilty of some of these practices as well. You need to look at it on scale. So when you look at multinationals who have big turnover, Nigeria wants them to do business. We welcome multinational corporations. They add value to the economy, but we're just saying they should pay their fair share of the taxes. And Nigeria is not alone in this request or this demand. It's a global thing. There's a whole range of global initiative being driven by the OECD and at the multilateral level at the UN to make equitable the tax paid by multinational corporations, because by their ability to aggressively plan their operations, okay, and records which indicate what they do, which is what the taxman will look at, okay, the boundary between tax evasion and tax avoidance becomes very thin. You can tell that from the beginning, this company planned not to pay its fair share of the taxes by the way it has planned its affairs, okay? And that means it intended to undermine the tax revenue of its host country. So the conversation, which Nigeria is not alone in agitating for, as I said, there are global initiatives like the OECD's Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Project, which Nigeria is a part of, which is designed to stop this sort of practices as well. Now, mind you, most of the multinational corporations are registered in the global north, countries in Europe and the Americas. So they recognize that this is a problem as well and all that. So that's the point.
So, Prof, so tell us about, you're having this meeting. Truth is, we've had meetings and conferences and talks and all of that. What's going to be different about this that FIRS is organizing, and how do you intend to move this from the talks to the works to, reduce these flows, at least?
So you know already that Nigeria has a new tax legal framework, which is going to kick in next year. FIRS is a significant player and has a huge responsibility in delivering on the revenue expectations of the country as the main collector of taxes and revenues. The FIRS has a responsibility to ensure that it does not disappoint the country in this regard. So this is much more than a conversation, your normal run of conference. It is meant to build capacity of those who will be involved in these operations. Even though the FIRS is the main player in the sector in terms of revenue collection, and if it cannot track properly, it cannot collect. So it must be able to track, but it needs the cooperation of other agencies. It has to work with a number of other Nigerian agencies. So part of the intention of this conference is to build synergy, okay? Is to build synergy for cooperation, for information exchange, information sharing, and to build capacity. Is to look at other ways and the experiences of people on the field by which we can improve the ability and the capacity to collect. More importantly, In recognition of his responsibility, the service created a new proceeds of crime and illicit management department within the service to focus on this issue. Now, take note that the FIRS is listed as a relevant organization in the Proceeds of Crime Act of 2022 because it is realized that tax evasion being a crime and money laundering, the boundary is very, very narrow between some of these practices, which will be carried out by, as you observed earlier on, by politically exposed person. So the service is preparing itself to play its role as anticipated in the relevant laws.
Well, I tell you, I think more Nigerians, the more we talk about it, more Nigerians anticipating the operationalizing of this new law, the tax law, and what the differences it will bring to small businesses, to individuals, and of course, to FIRS, whose responsibility, I believe, will be larger, and then we'll be looking more towards where you are.
Let me just make a quick comment on what it brings to small and medium enterprises.
Yeah.
Already, it brings a lot of relief. As you would have heard in the conversations in the public domain and the debates, certain groups of businesses are exempt from taxation. I mean, the government has been saying it does not want to tax poverty, it wants to tax wealth. So small and medium enterprises that fall beneath the threshold will not be taxed anymore. You can declare your records, but you'll be exempt from tax. When your operations, your business is booming and thriving, which is what the government wants, when you are able to properly capitalize and trade well, then you become taxable. Because the revenue will be obvious that you've made more revenue. So the new tax regime is balanced. It looks at the companies who are not paying their fair share of taxes at the moment. It gives the service the opportunity to then pay more attention to those big companies. It justifies the analysis that the poor cannot pay, whether individuals or corporations. When you are poor, you can't pay taxes. That's like punishment.
All right.
Okay, so the new tax legal framework already deals with those issues.
All right, Prof. Prof, thank you so much for that. And of course, the tax conversation is one that we're going to stay on, especially preparing the corporates ahead of that. Coordinating Director, Proceeds of Crimes, Illicit Financial Flows Directorate with FIRS, Professor Bolaji Owasanoye. Thank you so much for your time and your views this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.